And that ball is stroked. Gone! Oh my goodness, on a frozen rope.
Throw in there on one hop. Out! Oh, he hosed him.
Hop steps, great dump off and a two-hand jam. And the train keeps rolling. Here's episode 17 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. We went with intro number 4 again for this one. If you're new to the show, the intro sound bites are from some of my favorite highlight clips I made with my commentary. I hope you're all enjoying the new one. Last week, I told you what you already knew, that NBA money is a completely different animal. Most guys are vastly overpaid compared to production, and LeBron, Jason Tatum, Tyrese Maxey, those are some of the only guys that really kind of deserve those deals that they signed. After that, I told you about the Seattle Kraken's promotion of assistant coach Jessica Campbell, making her the first woman to sit behind an NHL bench. Lastly, I gave you my 4 best remaining NFL free agents, lobbying for your team to sign each one of them, because I know that they're going to improve somebody whenever they go, whether it's before the regular season starts or not. These guys are like meditation. You don't need it, but what if they help? Now, I've waited long enough. This episode is all about quarterback battles. It's time for me to roast your favorite team's situation. Guys are running out of time to make that last impression. People always say to me, you need to make a good first impression. Are you kidding me? That suggests that when you come in, you're as good as you're ever going to get. I really hope that that's not the case, especially with the quarterback that we think being just such a developmental case typically. So this is the exact reason why I'm going to start with the Minnesota Vikings. They drafted 21-year-old J.J. McCarthy from Michigan, 10th overall. The only real competition on that roster is 7th-year pro Sam Darnold. Now, further context from last year and more importantly from this offseason. Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles in Week 8. They had to fill in with a couple of journeymen and bozos for the most part. Josh Dobbs was one of them. Their current number 3 quarterback, Nick Mullins, was one. They played a 25-year-old rookie named Jaron Hall. All you got to know, that offense in Minnesota, it was terrible from the moment Kirk got hurt onward. After he signed that free agent deal with the Falcons, the options were incredibly slim. Sam Darnold played last year with San Francisco. Now, he and Josh Dobbs are trading places, so to speak. Dobbs will be heading to San Francisco to back up Brock Purdy, and Sam Darnold is solidly ahead in this current race with the Vikings from everything that the media has said so far from training camp. The number one reason why the Vikings can't afford an entire year of Sam Darnold is because he's one of those known commodities. He was vastly overhyped coming out of USC. He was only 20 years old when he got drafted. He looked the part physically, I'll give him that. His combine measurements, I think I have here, 6'3" 3/8". They always do that measurement to the 8th, not like it matters. Also weighed in at 221 pounds. Look, his athleticism, though, it was always average. He turned the ball over a ton in his last year of college, and if you do that with a loaded college offense and a great coach, you're not going to magically be better in the NFL. Those turnovers have always held him back from even being a good quarterback. He has more career turnovers than passing touchdowns, and that's absolutely foul. J.J. McCarthy, if he can do one thing right, it should be to protect the ball. He started 28 games in college. In those 28 games, J.J. only turned the ball over 9 times. I concede he had a dominant O-line and an awesome team all around him, but it's still a great sign. J.J.'s also the more accurate quarterback on paper. No one will ever say that accuracy is Sam Darnold's best trait. He's a gunslinger. He's a little less athletic than J.J., and probably has the talent of a career backup. I think you have to say it. J.J.'s younger, more athletic. He should probably make better decisions even as a rookie, and he needs to play. Now, in all these quarterback battles, I'm also going to tell you what I think will happen. So my verdict is that Kevin O'Connell and the staff start Sam Darnold for maybe the first half of this year, but I think they're going to get fed up by Week 8, maybe earlier. The bright side that I haven't gotten to, in Minnesota, either of these guys starting will get to throw to Justin Jefferson, who is probably the best receiver since Calvin Johnson. They get TJ Hawkinson, of course, coming over from the Lions a couple of years ago at tight end, and they also drafted a stud rookie last year, Jordan Addison. Aaron Jones comes in from Green Bay, taking over as their top running back. They could be in for a big offensive upswing, but I think that they have to give JJ the keys in order to really reach their potential. Okay, now we move on to the Broncos. Has anyone put in a call to see if John Elway is staying in shape? Hear me out. He's 64 years old, and he is probably their best option. So the real options are Bo Nix, the 12th overall pick. He had crazy college stats, but he was also very much a product of his environment. Zach Wilson, who somehow managed to get cast off from the New York Football Jets after 3 absolutely putrid years. He never once went over 10 touchdowns or 2,500 yards, and he started a majority of the games in 2 of those seasons. And then there's Jarrett Stidham. He's a career backup / third stringer who's played in 16 games total in 5 years. I solidly believe this is the worst quarterback situation in the NFL. At least the Vikings offense on paper has a lot to offer. Last year's Broncos weren't as bad as you probably thought. They were just boring, and a lot was made of that sort of clash of styles between Russell Wilson and Sean Payton. I totally do think that held them back. Russell Wilson is chaos incarnate, and it's worked for well over a decade. Sean Payton is absolutely all about structure, and if you don't have awesome players, then how do you expect to be a top offense? The Broncos have unproven guys and question marks everywhere. Courtland Sutton is their number 2 wide receiver, although he's going to have to step in and be the number 1 now, as they traded Jerry Jeudy away, their top target, to the Browns. Looking at Sutton's numbers from last year, he had 10 touchdowns, and no one else on the team had more than 4. If they don't sign him to a long-term extension, that's going to end up being a big problem. They were 18th in rushing. They were buoyed by some pretty good runs from Russell Wilson at quarterback, actually. Credit to him doing that at, I believe, 34 years old last year. They were 24th in passing yards offensively, and they didn't add any big names in the draft or free agency. That's a problem. The Broncos are going to downgrade at quarterback no matter who ends up playing for them. Bo Nix, I would say at least has the most upside. Similarly to Sam Darnold, we know that Zach Wilson is not the guy, and his turnover rate is even crazier than Sam Darnold's in the NFL. I think I want to see Bo Nix start for the whole year, but I don't know if it's going to happen. Making this offense watchable is a really tall task. Sean Payton is one of those great offensive-minded coaches of our era, but the future just doesn't look bright overall, and do any of those guys fit the really precise systems that Sean Payton likes to run? Not really. My overall projection, I'm going to say Bo Nix does end up starting a whole season, but probably isn't good enough for them to stick with him in the long term. Now, the New England Patriots. It's sort of a joke all of its own now, isn't it? They're still the best team of the 2000s, in terms of win percentage, total wins. Every single one of their 6 Super Bowls were within the 2000s here, right? But they were all with Tom Brady. Now they might become the worst team of the 2020s if they don't get it turned around really quickly. The good news was they finally got into position to draft a quarterback super high. They went with 21-year-old Drake May from North Carolina, 3rd overall. The mistake everybody's making is assuming that he's going to come in and start right away. I've tried to tell you. He's going to have to beat out Jacoby Brissett, who's mostly a very good backup quarterback to this point in his career, but pretty much every time he's had to start, he also plays well. The things that you see about Jacoby Brissett on game day: he checks the ball down a lot, he scrambles a little bit, he just doesn't have much star power, doesn't have that it factor, but he doesn't make mistakes. Let me be crystal clear. He is, at worst, a league average quarterback. That means that, by definition, he's better than a lot of other starters and almost every other backup. The reason I think he's going to start over Drake May, possibly for the whole year, the Patriots were so wrong when they picked Mac Jones back in 2021. They really thought, I'm sorry, this is hysterical, they really thought that they were getting the next Tom Brady. A guy who would be a statue in the pocket, who didn't look like much physically, but he was this great competitor and decision maker and would just win a ton of games. Mac Jones, of course, was foul and set the franchise back multiple years. Then he got traded to the Jaguars this offseason for a bag of Cool Ranch Doritos, essentially. What the Patriots really need to do is stop being wrong. It's already too late to save Bill Belichick's job, and I still can't believe I'm saying that. By the way, did you hear he's going to join the Inside the NFL crew? Kind of excited about that. Anyway, the Patriots can quickly stop being a laughingstock if they get a little bit better at the whole risk-reward management. So the risk with Drake May was always super obvious, and I covered it in depth in my mock draft episode, but I'll briefly rehash it. Drake May came out of college a redshirt sophomore. His freshman year was a lot better than the sophomore season in just about every way, though. He completed 65% of his passes those 2 years, but his decision-making on tape is frightening. He happens to have an amazing arm, which is great, and very good legs, which plays well in today's NFL. That lets him get away with this sort of really audacious style. He just runs around, forcing throws everywhere, and with super wonky mechanics. Now, of course, I'm not a quarterback, never played it, but I've been around good ones, and I've seen some even better ones. I've watched football absolutely all the time, and with no proven receivers, with a very boring and an inefficient scheme, plus a horrid, arguably the worst offensive line in football, Drake May's issues that he's already put on tape cannot get any better. Jacoby Brissett has played for a lot of bad teams, in fact, almost all bad teams, in similar situations to this. He's always helped them out at least a little bit. If the coaching staff in New England, under Gerard Mayo, gets a little impatient, Drake May might get into a few games. He could even start towards the end of the season, especially if they're out of contention, right? But I think he'd be much better waiting a year or two on the bench, especially at his age. That's the thing with some of the top quarterbacks of this draft. We would think with the COVID year that all of the 24 to 26-year-olds would be the ones that are sort of ready to start right away, but that's not how the league views any of these guys. Now, the only other quarterback battle that's particularly competitive, in my eyes anyway, is Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew with the Las Vegas Raiders. That still doesn't roll off the tongue. I seriously will probably call them the Oakland Raiders at some point, possibly even in this script. For my money, Gardner Minshew will be the starter. Because if not, then they flushed money down the toilet bringing him in. It was a 2-year and $25 million deal. The only numbers I need to describe him: 59 touchdowns to 24 interceptions in 37 career starts. That's amazing. He just started 13 games with the Colts last year, and he was good enough, but he wasn't great. It's another case where the whole Colts team around him wasn't quite good enough for them to get in the playoffs. He would probably be the cheapest starting quarterback that's not on a rookie deal, so the Raiders can still spend money everywhere else. They actually have about $34 million left in cap room currently. They were never going to get Kirk Cousins. They probably weren't going to draft any of the top quarterbacks with where they were picking in the draft. They went 13th, and they chose Brock Bowers, the absolutely all-world tight end from Georgia. Now, here's why I think Aiden O'Connell won't be the guy. O'Connell started the second half of last year after Jimmy Garoppolo got benched and then got popped with a PED suspension. In the 10 games that Aiden O'Connell started, they went 5-5. The numbers were probably worse than the eye test on him, though. It was 12 touchdowns to 9 total turnovers, 200 yards a game, pretty much on the dot, completed 62% of passes. O'Connell's going to be quite old when you think about it for a second-year guy. He's turning 26 in September, but that's what happens when you spend 6 years in college and you were never crazy talented. No one accused him of being one of the top quarterbacks that year. You'd like to see quarterbacks get a little bit longer leash than 10 games, but the fact is that Gardner Minshew is the better player currently and for his career. I rarely see the oldest quarterbacks in a draft class pan out the best, especially if they don't hit the ground running and play well off the bat. That's exactly the issue with Aiden O'Connell. So my final prediction, I think this is, I'll say the most difficult one to call, but I am going to go with Gardner Minshew. The Raiders, of course, as an entire organization, are lost and have been for quite a while. That said, you should play the best player at the time for your franchise. So, there you have my take on some NFL quarterback battles. Vegas odds makers are pretty much on board with me. All of these guys that I picked are the favorites to varying degrees. I'll put something in the Q&A for this episode to the effect of, which rookie quarterback has the best chance of starting their team's opening game. Now I want to take a quick look at this year's two WNBA Rookie All-Stars and a couple of interesting storylines around them. So the WNBA All-Star game is on Saturday night, July 20th. Before that, on Friday the 19th, they'll have the three-point contest and the skills challenge. Now, of course, the two players that I want to focus on, you'll be shocked, it's Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. First overall pick versus seventh overall pick. 2023 National Championship winner versus two-time runner-up. The most famous versus arguably the second most famous current WNBA player. They got chippy in that National Championship back in 2023. They've matched up head-to-head 3 times now in the league. And honestly, all of those games have been awesome, but also heated. It'll be some really good physical comedy to see them on the court as teammates and how they manage those emotions. What we know about them in the league right now, they've been the two best rookies by a wide margin. They both made some history. Some of their big performances to highlight, Caitlin had the first WNBA triple-double by a rookie. That was back on Saturday the 6th. 19 points, 12 rebounds, 13 assists. Also the youngest player ever to have a triple-double at 22 years old. The reason that was such a huge stat line was because they had to make a comeback in the fourth quarter and beat the Liberty, who were 17-3 coming into that game. Caitlin's scoring has ticked up in general, and she's really benefited a ton from everyone else on that Fever team playing better, helping out her assist numbers. Angel Reese leads all rookies in rebounds, steals, and just set the league record for consecutive double-doubles with, at the time of recording, 14 and counting. Now, of course, they haven't been perfect, and no one will be when they first step foot into any professional arena. They've both been a little inefficient in the traditional sense. The three-point and the field goal percentage are lower for each of them than you'd like. And by the way, they've been met with world-class competition. Shocker. They look a lot more human than they did in college. That's what's supposed to happen. You need to take on that best competition. You need to take some lumps, and then you learn and you get better. Hopefully every single year. Still, those two were some of the most voted on All-Stars. Caitlin was first overall. That speaks volumes to her level of celebrity. That's unreal. Angel was the 5th overall vote getter, and it's been 10 years since two rookies made the WNBA All-Star team. It was back in 2014. Of course, I dove back into the voting records a little bit, and when you look at the records from that time and the vote count to now, it's unbelievable how it's changed. Maya Moore of the Lynx was the most voted player in 2014. She had about 28,000 votes. And this year, Caitlin Clark went over 700,000. I'm not kidding or exaggerating when I say this. I don't think I can remember another single athlete that has ever done so much for their sport in such a short time. She's got to be one of the most recognizable faces in sports and across the world right now. And I don't think we've ever said that about a WNBA player. It's impossible not to gush about, in a way. If you're tired of hearing it, then I have bad news for you, because on the court it looks like she is finally starting to get better, turn that corner, and be exactly what people thought she was going to be. Neither Caitlin nor Angel are on great teams or in great situations. They're not at their full potential yet, and through it all, they're still dominating the media cycle. A couple of other notable WNBA All-Stars. Brittany Griner has now made it for a decade straight, every single year she's been active. She's one of 3 that can say that, the others being Asia Wilson of the Aces and Aaliyah Boston, also of the Fever. The most overall selections title also goes to the oldest member, as you might imagine. That's Diana Taurasi of the Phoenix Mercury. She just turned 42 years old in June, and she can still ball on girls half her age. I mean, that's crazy. One thing I forgot to mention, every single other player on the roster has been an All-Star at least once before. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are the only 2 first-timers, interestingly enough. I'd say the odds of that seem almost astronomically low, that no one would have, say been injured early on in their career or just had a breakout after a few years, maybe after a role change, but that is what the numbers say. Of course, there's a ton of overlap between the All-Star team and the Olympic team. I did already cover the Olympic squad and the drama behind not including Caitlin Clark on it. Last thing I'll say about it is you absolutely better win if you don't include her, or you will get a massive "I told you so" from the entire Olympic audience. And that'll do it for episode 17 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. That huge MLB All-Star Break episode is coming, trust. Things I'm planning to get into in that episode, which will probably have to be multiple parts. I'm going to repick my postseason award predictions from the beginning of the season. I've promised that so many times, but really, now it's time. I'd like to include Gold Gloves and Silver Sluggers at every position, and full 30-team power rankings. If we get time, hopefully my guest and I can even make some predictions around the home run derby and the all-star game outcomes, things like that. You'll definitely want to catch that episode if you feel any emotion for the game of baseball. Now, I haven't taken a moment to say it in a few weeks, so here it is again. I really appreciate each and every listener. I'm still really enjoying the processes of researching, scripting, making intros, recording, editing week after week. I have my workflow down pretty well, and it all comes down to watching and reading about sports to get inspired. I could always use more sets of ears and eyes for ideas, of course, and you can feel free to hit me on my socials if you have any of those. Instagram and TikTok at The Voice of Tanner, connect on LinkedIn, and as always, leave a like, comment, and share. This has been episode 17 of White Noise Sports with Tanner White. Thanks for joining me.
And that ball is stroked. Gone!
Oh my goodness, on a frozen rope.
Throw in there on one hop. Out! Oh, he hosed him.
Hop steps, great dump off, and a two-hand jam.